AP Psych 2023.
Hi, my name is Amelia Earhart. It's nice to meet you.
Hello. Hello.
I was born on July 24th, 1897, in Atchison, Kansas. My dad's name was Edwin, and he was a lawyer, and my mom's name was Amy, and she was a housewife because it's 1897. I had one sister. Her name was Grace, but she went by Pidge. I was a tomboy because my mom raised me not to be she didn't want a typical girl. She wanted me to be adventurous and explore, which is also what led me to be interested in flying later on in my life. Pidge and I ran all over the neighborhood making roller coasters out of things we could find. There were a lot of injuries and a lot of bruises. After I finally got enrolled into public school when I was 12 years old in 7th grade. Before that, we just had a library with a lot of books, and I really loved to read, so I read a lot of books and educated myself. And then I graduated from Hyde Park High School in Chicago, where my family had to move because my dad became an alcoholic and then he couldn't find a job. After high school, I visited my sister in Canada, in Toronto, during World War I, and saw where she worked, and then I wanted to help out myself, so I went and got nurses aid training from the Red Cross, and then I helped out pilots and soldiers that came in wounded. And right after that, the Spanish flu hit, and so then I worked for a nurses aid as well, all through the Spanish flu, and I wound up getting Spanish flu myself. And I was laid up in bed for a year with symptoms of Spanish flu, and then I wound up having to have a drain in my ear like all the time. So sometimes when I had to go fly, you could see the drain taped to the side of my face, where my ear would drain out when I was up in the air. When I was in Toronto, I visited an airfield, and there was an air show, and that's what got me interested in wanting to fly. So in 1920, I booked my first flying lesson. It was $10 for 10 minutes in the air. And then after that, I hired somebody to give me regular flying lessons. It cost about $500 for a short period of time, and I worked a bunch of jobs so I could continue paying for the $500 over and over again. In 1921, I bought my first airplane, and then flew to hit my first world record, flying to 14,000 feet as a female for the first time. And then in 1923, I was issued a pilot's license, only the 16th female in the country to get my pilot's license. In 1928, Amy Guest, who was another female pilot, was supposed to fly the first transatlantic flight, and she decided it was too dangerous, so she wound up bailing out, and so they gave the job to me. So then I flew for the first time across the country, and just as a passenger. I didn't pilot the plane because I didn't know how to use the instruments. There was no training at the time for women, so I flew as a guest. And then in 1928, I flew my first female solo nonstop flight across the country and back. And in 1931, I got married to George Putnam, and he was very progressive. We had an extremely progressive marriage where we each had our own roles and we each had job responsibilities, and everybody pulled their own weight in the marriage. And then in 1932, I flew the first nonstop transatlantic flight solo without making any stops from here and there. And that wasn't good enough for me, so I decided that I wanted to do an entire world flight in 30 days. And I got funding for it, and the first attempt was on March 17th, 1937, but when I was leaving the runway, one of my tires blew, and the plane slammed on the runway and was damaged. So then I had to wait for it to be repaired, and then the second attempt left in July of the same year. And everything was going fine, but I was supposed to make a stop, and I couldn't find the land I was supposed to stop at, and the radio communications were really bad, and I was running out of gas. And then on July 2nd at 8:34, I made my last transmission, and no one ever saw the plane again.
What?
in 1927, and I was presumed dead.
Oh.
January 5th, 1937, and I was presumed dead on January 5th, 1939.
Oh. Wow. You're an amazing woman.
My prop is a world for my world map, and then my poster has all of my information on it. And I will set your timer.
Ooh. Ooh. Okay. Timer started. My name is Albert Einstein. I was born March 14th in Württemberg, Germany. I have one younger sister named Maria, but she wasn't as smart as me. I attended a Swiss Polytechnic School in Zurich, Switzerland. I went there to receive teacher training, but I could not get a job as a teacher. So I went and got a job as a teacher, as an assistant at a Swiss patent office. And while I was there, I earned my doctorate degree in 1905. I then got married to a lady named Mileva Merrick. We had a daughter prior to being married, okay? Her name was Lisa, but there is no mention of her after the age of 2. So I'm not sure if my wife put her up for adoption or did something with her, okay? After we got married, we had 2 sons, Hans and Edward, okay? Then after a while, I got kind of tired of her, so I divorced her and I married Elsa Lowenthal, who's also my first cousin. She did die early on me though. She died in 1936, so I was left alone, and it just gave me more time to think and think and think. You may have heard about my most famous theories. I'm known for my special theory of relativity in 1905, the relativity theory in 1920, the general theory of relativity in 1916, the investigations of theory of Brownian movement, the evolution of physics in 1938, and my theory of relativity is most famous. Say it with me. E equals mc squared. Woo! Preach. So, that is my very famous theory. It still stands today. Hence my prop, the globe. Because this theory lasts across the globe. Everybody believes it. It is a well-known theory that is not going away. E equals mc squared. So, let's talk about my children. We also I have a son who also was a wonderful scientist. He was known for doing testing and research on landfill. My other son, that was Hans. My younger son, Edward, had some issues. Okay, he was found to be schizophrenic. Okay, and he was institutionalized at the age of 23, and I didn't get to see him often because I was busy being a scientist. I won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. My big theory that you all should know is that motion of one thing is always relative to the motion of everything else. So, last but not least, I died. At April 18th, 1955 in Princeton, New Jersey. And I'm not talking German, but I'm talking funny. Anyways, in Princeton, New Jersey, I did not work at Princeton University, but I found the city to be quaint and to my liking. So I had an office space in their math building. But that is the end of my life, and it is wonderful. Here is my poster. There I am at my this is my 72nd birthday. The photographer told me to smile. I do not like to smile, so I stuck my tongue out at him. Very famous picture, by the way. Got a picture of me with my cousin, my second wife. And my favorite quote, and you all need to know this because I live by this. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Remember that. Oh.